Good evening. So I should apologize in advance. There isn't a huge amount of AI in this talk. Because it used to be the DevOps-Exchange, so I haven't moved with the times. So let me find out who's in the room. How many engineers do we have by a show of hands? Oh, that's about half. And how many, the rest of you are in management? Hands up if you're in management. Not many? Okay, then there's some mysterious others who are just here for the pizza. Do you ever write code? Yeah, okay. Ops, yeah, okay, that's a form of engineering. One that I did for a long time. Okay, so my name's Ian Miell. I'm a CTO at Container Solutions. And Container Solutions is a company that helps with what we were hearing about before, about transformation. And we do mostly infrastructure work, infrastructure engineering, or cloud native engineering, and we also do some standard engineering, software development work. But I'm not here to talk about what we do for our day job. I'm here to talk about something slightly different that we did when I became CTO. I decided to stop people doing, not allow people on the bench to just do certifications, which mostly I think are a waste of time for the kind of work that we do. And rather get them to actually build an application that could be used in the real world. So I'm here to talk about an open source project that seeks to bring DevOps principles to controls. Now, how many people in the room how many people in the room have written controls? One. Well, I mean, okay, how many people know what a control is? Okay, not many. Right, okay. Okay, so how many people here work in finance? Oh, I thought there'd be more of you. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, so anyway, so controls are instructions, or rather, what are controls? Okay, controls are the means by which you enforce rules within a business or across an industry for some goal. So I spent 15 years working in online gambling. So I work for a company that does the back-end systems for Paddy Power, Ladbrokes, William Hill, basically all the major bookmakers except Bet365, which was on the WorldPay slide earlier, I noticed. They do their own software. So I spent 15 years in that world, and I had live access to their production databases a year out of college. I had anonymous admin access, root access to the live database of William Hill, Ladbrokes, Paddy Power. There were no controls, right? So controls would have sought to stop that. And if you work for a bank, you may spend a lot of your time dealing with controls. So a control might be, for example, all communications must be cryptographically secure. That might be a control within your business. And at the moment, 1 to 3, so it's part of compliance, and 1 to 3% of the US business spend is on compliance. So it's a big business. And basically what I'm going to argue is that the way that we manage compliance is wrong and is changing. So I'm going to talk about what is wrong with compliance management today, what we're doing about it, and where we're going with it. So I worked for Barclays for 5 years after I worked for that gambling company for 15 years. And I was there to do Docker. So about 2014, I got into Docker, wrote a book on Docker, and then I became the owner of Docker at Barclays. And a lot of my time implementing Kubernetes back in 2015-16 was spent dealing with security and audit around the controls that they wanted to enforce on us. So one example was, did anyone here use Kubernetes? Okay, good show. Right, so more than did controls, right? So for example, I had to argue with them about the fact that Kubernetes secrets were not really secret, right? That was a large part of my day. I also had to argue with engineers across Barclays who would phone me up because I was the owner of Docker, and they would say, when can I get Docker on my desktop? And I would say, you're not going to get Docker on your desktop because at that time you had to be root, you had to get root to have it. And that's just not going to happen because one of our controls is you don't get root, right? So I'm going to talk about what's wrong with compliance today, what we're doing about it, and where we Container Solutions are going with it. So first of all, what's wrong with it? Has anyone here been subject to an audit? Okay. More than know about controls, so find that odd. Okay. Yeah, at the moment, when you do an audit or when you deal with controls in a business, or as a tech team, or as an architect, or as a manager, you do it using Confluence pages, spreadsheets, PDFs, and so the typical workflow would be you'd have a Confluence page with 10 controls that you need to conform to, and then you'd have another cell that would say how you've implemented that control in your piece of software or your piece of infrastructure, and then you'd have who's going to check it, and you track it with spreadsheets. And auditors take those spreadsheets or those PDFs or whatever, and they look at them and they decide whether it's good enough or not. And this is amazingly laborious for everyone involved. In fact, it was a spreadsheet like this. So we worked with a tier 1 bank, and a CISO said to us at some point, there must be a better way of doing this than just writing all this stuff down laboriously every time we have to do it every 6 months. And we said, well, that sounds like an automation challenge, so we'd like to do that. So we put together a proof of concept. This was a couple of years ago, and that's how we got started. So this kind of thing was how we got into this. Second thing is that audits and compliance checks are periodic. They happen typically every 6 months or a year or some cadence like that. We spoke to a bank. We worked with a bank doing a mainframe to Kubernetes migration, and we asked them about their compliance process, and they said that they had 200 teams, and they would check one of those teams every year. So if you had teams that were doing things that were completely dodgy, you wouldn't necessarily know about it for 200 years. So that doesn't seem very effective or efficient. So problem 2 is it's periodic, it's not continuous. You can't at any point say, here's our compliance status. And the third is that everything is bespoke. So as we talked about earlier, there's lots of different audit and security related systems, but they don't talk to each other. You have to take the information from one, parse it, and then communicate it to another. We spoke to an arms manufacturer who said they had 8 different systems that dealt with compliance that didn't talk to each other. And it was a huge part of, obviously working in defense, every time they make a code change, it takes 3 weeks to do the paperwork. I don't know if it's like that in the Met. Andrew? Oh, Andrew? Is it laborious to make a change in the Met? As laborious as that? It's 3 weeks to make a change in the Met. Okay. No worries. Okay. So these different systems can't talk to each other. They're proprietary, not interoperable, not standardized, and so on. But so what? The world's worked the way it has for years. What's going to change? So there's various pieces of legislation which are coming, which many people in this room will hear about over the coming years. So one of them is DORA. Well, if you work in an international environment. So there's DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, which is the typical piece of EU legislation, which doesn't actually say what they want, but it doesn't say specifically what they want, but it says generally that you've got to up your game, the industry. There's the Cyber Resilience Act, which also talks about what the DORA Act talks about, which is continuous compliance. The US is also getting in on this as they talk more and more about wanting continuous compliance. Essentially what's happened is in 2008, banks nearly died and we couldn't get money out of cash machines. We were an hour away from not getting money out of cash machines, okay? So all the regulators in the world said, that can't happen again. So every bank must be securely funded for forever, right? So they sorted out that side of things. It's now 17 years later, and they're now turning their attention to operations. So they're now sort of saying, you can't just do audits every 6 months. We need to be able to come into your business and ask you for a report on your current compliance status today. So the world is moving towards this. So what are we doing about it? So we've built, over the last couple of years, we've built this tool called the Continuous Compliance Framework, which is designed to help with this. And one of the things on that previous slide is a thing called OSCAL. So OSCAL is a NIST standard around the compliance lifecycle. It seeks to define interoperable documents that can talk to each other about all aspects of the compliance lifecycle. What does that mean? That means that we can get rid of PDFs and put everything into a single schema. So a single kind of way of talking about compliance so that systems can talk to each other, okay? And that's going to reduce the cost hugely. So this is the Open Security Controls Assessment language. It's called security, but it's no longer about security. And it produces documents like this. So you've got a control catalog, which is basically a list of controls. And it's, you can see it's it's translatable to JSON. So these documents can be shared. Regulators are now starting to publish their catalogs in this format, so in this sort of digital format, and expecting banks and so on to take them and be able to parse them and run with them. Okay, the schema itself is quite complicated. So this is one small part of the schema represented. I put this together using Neo4j. So this represents each different color is a different type of entity within the broader entity of just plan of action and milestones, right? Which is just one small part of OSCAL. And you can see it's not very simple. So a lot of our work has been decoding this standard and figuring out how it all works together. And although it looks crazy, I mean, it's a classic sort of standard by committee. But they've built it, NIST have built this over 5 years, and we've come to really appreciate what they've done. So we think this will become the standard in the future for how we exchange information. And just more broadly, where we are with compliance now is where we were with security about 15, 20 years ago. So 15, 20 years ago, security was this annoying thing. I don't know how many engineers here were coding 15 years ago, but I didn't really think about security at all. Occasionally someone would talk to me about the OWASP top 10 as I was writing code for gambling apps. And I would go, yeah, well, we already run regexps over the things that come in, so we're fine. But that changed over the last 10, 15 years, and now there's a lot more focus on SBOMs and all these different things, which mean that we now talk about DevSecOps, right, as a continuous thing. We continuously want to be secure, not just check every now and again or when there's a panic. Okay, so there's a little bit about OSCAL, but I'll just skip over that. So I'll just show you a quick demo of what we've got. Okay. So at the core of what we've got here is this is a demo we've set up. It's got stuff in AWS and it's got stuff in sort of traditional servers, on-prem servers, and each row here represents a stream of evidence coming in from that location. So this one, for example, we've got name-value pairs in each of these streams, so we can identify what they are. So this is a GitHub check. It's checking that we've got two-factor authentication at the org level. This is the org that relates to, and so on. So I can I can winnow this down. For example, I can say, just show me the ones related to SSH. So we've got SSH checks here, host name, so on. There's also other name-value pairs on here that we can list as well. So using these, we can winnow. Imagine if you're a compliance officer working for a large bank or a manufacturing company or something. You'll have thousands and thousands and thousands of these, right? Loads of these checks all going on every 5 minutes or however often you want to run them. We have a plugin architecture, so you can write plugins that check for things that you want, and then a policy engine in Rego. You can write policies in Rego, which are built just for your company. So we're working with 3 companies now, helping them write policies so that they can track their own compliance status. So what I can do is, if I just search for a very specific check. So I'm checking for SSH, and I'm checking for specifically the deny password based root SSH. So we're going down to a very specific check, and this is across the 4 servers we've got, 4 Kubernetes hosts. And if I want to save that, I can save that over here. So we'll call that SSH root. Oops. Oh, did I save that? No. Okay, let's try that again. SSH root. And what I can do is I can map that to a specific control. So I can take that evidence and then map it to, let's say, 8.1. That's cryptographic protection. And if I submit that. Okay, so I've saved that in my dashboards. And you can see down here we've got SSH root, we've got 0 satisfied, 4 not satisfied, and it's against that particular control. Now, if I go to my list of controls, so this is the sort of list of controls that we need to conform to in our business. I can go to SC8 and oh, that's SA. God, my eyesight. Where are we? SC. There we go. SC 8.1. We now have this pill that shows us our performance against that control across our business. So with a bit of mapping, you can get a very quick view of where you are by control. You can also get a view by team. You can get a view, and that's one of the use cases that people are using this for. So we were working with one company that has 200 companies working under it, and they want to know how each of those 200 companies are doing against a standard set of controls. And so they've got 200 on this dashboard, and they go and beat up the one that's the most red. right? So that's one use case for this. All this other stuff we've got, I won't go into great detail about it, but we've got workflows. So if you have let's say you have to go and get the logs from a web server or set of web servers every week, and then someone has to check those logs for a particular regex or something, or for anything anomalous, and then someone else has to check that work's been done, and that's your process, then you can track that in here and put it on a weekly cadence, and if you forget about it, it'll remind you. So this is one of the things that we've been asked for as a result of this. Okay, so where are we? Let's go back. So yeah, here we go. Slideshow. Right, so some of the use cases we got, we talked about so we talked to a bunch of people in retail, people who manage retail, and they said, yeah, the compliance stuff is great, but this is really good for seeing which teams are doing dangerous things, or third-party risk management. You know, which of our third parties are really are not conforming with what we want. And the reason for that is, well, one of the reasons that retail are particularly interested in that is because you might have heard of the Harrods and the recent, was it Marks and Spencer's, who had the recent hack? My understanding is that those hacks were based on third parties that those retailers had hired to do a particular job, and they'd failed to conform to the controls that those retailers had set for them. So, like security, it's becoming a big deal. There's a question of liability as well. You know, if you're a retailer and you set these controls for these third parties and they haven't followed them, they're liable potentially. Whereas if they did follow them and could demonstrate they've followed them, they wouldn't be liable. So potentially there's a lot of money in this. Another one is consultancies want to use this to quickly go into a business and say, look, we can point out all the ways some of the bigger consultancies, we can point out all the ways that you're not conforming to control frameworks, and we can help you with that. So consultancies are using it for that. And this interoperability thing I've talked about before. So yeah, that's a very quick look at this thing we're building. The AI angle on this, so there's 2 points about AI. One is that when I talk to people who work in compliance, they're allergic to AI. They say, you can't use AI. We don't want to have anything to do with products that have anything to do with AI because it takes away the accountability. But there's another side of it, which is a lot of writing controls and managing controls is generating text from a whole bunch of different documents that you've got lying around that specify how your systems work. And so it's a perfect use case for generative AI because you can just point it at your Google Docs folder with all your stuff in it and just say, here's some controls. How do I satisfy them at the moment? What are my gaps? Give me a report. So we're looking at ways to secretly put AI in there to help compliance officers speed up the work that they do. And it's a very expensive thing. So a huge chunk of banks' profits are eaten up through compliance because a bank only exists if it has a banking license. If it loses the banking license, it's not a business anymore. So it's a big deal for them. They spend a lot of money on it. There's a lot of jobs in it. And at the moment, it's very expensive and manual. So that's CCF. Anyone who wants to talk about it, please come and talk to me afterwards. I should also say I'm writing a book called Follow the Money for O'Reilly about how culture is determined by, because we hear a lot about culture at these sort of meetups, and working with companies, I get frustrated a little bit because people don't look at how the money moves around a business and how that determines culture. So I'm writing a book about that with O'Reilly at the moment. Come talk to me about that too if you want. Early releases, if you've got O'Reilly subscriptions, early releases coming out any day now. They've just sent me the cover. And yes, thank you very much. If you want to know more, there's a website, continuouscompliance.io, and the open source is there, compliance-framework. And there's a webinar tomorrow where we go into this in more detail. If you want to sign up, please sign up tonight. And you can come at 4 tomorrow to see us talk about it, meet some of the developers. Okay, thank you very much.